Hello, I'm Eric Gonzaga, National Managing Partner for the Human Capital Services Practice at Grant Thornton, and I'm pleased to be joined by Randolph Smith, who is the National Managing Partner for the Transportation and Distribution Industry. Randolph, it's great to be here with you today to discuss workforce issues, and I am looking forward to discussing transportation and distribution with you. Well, Randolph, why is the industry struggling, from your perspective?
Well, Eric, from an economic standpoint, they're actually doing very well, but from labor issues, they have been struggling for years and are continuing to struggle. Especially in the transportation sector, the driver shortage has been exacerbated, upwards of 100,000 short on drivers, between 80 and 100,000 short on drivers, especially in the long haul trucking, in the truckload long haul part of the industry. The issues of being away from home are significant. Drivers want to be home more frequently. There are regulations with regard to how much they can drive per day. And so companies are being very aggressive in recruiting them, as they really kind of always have been, but we've seen pay skyrocket. We've seen bonus payments, both onboarding and retention bonuses. We've seen better issues, help with parking, et cetera. So it's a very significant issue that is really disrupting the supply chain and has been, as we all know, for the last couple of years.
Right. And, Randolph, and it's always been a struggle to get drivers, but why is that struggle more intense at this point?
Well, part of it is that, the average age of drivers is pushing in the 50s, and people aren't attracted to the industry. As you know, unemployment is very, very low. It's difficult to attract someone to become a driver from another industry. Construction trade has been very strong, which is a situation where they're getting home daily in most cases. And just the lifestyle of being on the road. I was talking to somebody yesterday where a local company was offering drivers $80,000 a year to drive, where it's a local job, intrastate, home every night, along with a $20,000 signing bonus. So it's just really kind of gotten a bit out of hand, and that labor shortage and the driver shortage has caused a real issue in the transportation and the distribution sectors.
What do you feel are the biggest changes that the industry can make to address the worker shortage in conjunction with the outside body?
Yeah, one thing, Eric, that's great about this industry is that all the various sectors and competitors work together to solve these problems, and are working together with both federal and state governments. They're addressing an opportunity to get younger drivers involved. Right now, you have to be 21 years old in order to have an interstate CDL, and so we've got people returning from the military and other young people who have experience or have their CDL but can't do over the road or interstate commerce. And so we're looking at some legislation to allow that to actually happen, so that those 18 and older or 19 and older can drive, which would help tremendously. Another thing that they've done is hire people at their companies to work in other parts of the business, for example, their terminals or their docks, and get them involved in the business with the effort to convert them to drivers. Once they attain the age of 21. There are also many companies are starting their own driver schools in an effort to train these guys so that they're ready, guys and girls, frankly, so that they're ready to drive when they attain the age of 21. And then also there's been more focus on, especially over the road, with partner drivers. So you have teams of drivers, two people per tractor, allows them to drive essentially 24 hours, and makes the travel a little easier on each. And so that's been somewhat successful at various companies. We're especially excited about the fact the government's looking at legislation finally to allow these younger people to drive.
When we think about some of the future solutions, just to meet the demand, What are some of these final solutions and strategies that the trucking industry can take?
The American Trucking Research Institute has released studies that show what the driver's 10 biggest concerns are and what the carrier's 10 largest concerns are. And driver pay is, as you can imagine, highest at the from a driver's standpoint, but it does remain on the list at the carrier. So continued focus on pay. One other issue that has had a dramatic impact is there's been a lack of parking for these drivers. Lots of states have shut down their rest areas for various reasons, and so that creates a real critical issue. Drivers sometimes spend a couple hours a day looking for parking, and they can only drive 11 hours total out of 14 hours a day. So really tough situation.
From my perspective, certainly compensation and benefits, that's table stakes at this point. And the numbers are going up higher than they have historically. And like other industries, the trucking industry just needs to match, the market to the extent that they can. However, what has become, and this is from somewhat industry agnostic, when we think about the second phase after folks have enhanced, their compensation and benefits. I mean, there's some very wonderful strategies that Randolph was talking about that certainly are helpful, like driving schools. There's some relationship there to health systems opening up nursing schools to help with the nursing shortage, and that's been used to great effect. But ultimately, the biggest change in all industries is taking care of the employee, emphasizing culture. Number one. Number two, enhancing transparency and communication with the team, and that would relate back to the truckers as well, to get them to tie into the culture of the organization, because studies have found that compensation and benefits very important. However, is it going to be, if you're paid fairly, competitively with the rest of the market? Is that what's going to keep employees? And the answer is no. It really comes down to all things pay being equal, enhancing the culture, and so that includes things like training and education, but it also expands to the broader array of how you recognize, reward, and motivate your employees. So I think from that perspective, I mean, it really comes down to culture and enhancing culture. Just to kind of show your competitive differentiation really is about your employees, as opposed to just simply the differentiation in pay.
Eric, I'm curious, you've worked with many different industries. How might the transportation and logistics and distribution industries learn from what maybe things that others have done that have been successful?
Ultimately, just in reference to organizational culture, successful companies, and actually in the trucking industry, we've seen that as well, is in taking proactive action in terms of managing culture, perceptions of by the employees, and really taking feedback very seriously, from employees in terms of whether it's work-life balance or just simply the wants and needs of truckers themselves. When you think about the greatest source of data nowadays, I mean, oftentimes, whether it's Glassdoor or other online reviews, these are even being taken into account, within the context of the trucking industry, which historically hasn't been the case. So it's a good sign that recognizing that this industry, which has struggled with drivers before COVID, and certainly it's more pronounced at this point, it's just that trucking companies are beginning to get in tune. Not beginning, they're emphasizing the need to stay in tune or get in tune with their truckers, no different than any other industry, recognizing that they're producers for the organization. So,
thank you for joining us today. Hope the information we shared with you all was helpful. I also want to thank Eric for participating. Feel free to contact us with questions. Thank you.